After touring Gdansk, I was headed into Warsaw to spend the next 24 hours exploring Old Town. I had heard mixed reviews about the city and was determined to find the most unique things to see in Warsaw. So I grabbed a taxi to my Airbnb and was surprised at how peaceful, well-lit, and frankly, colorful the city was at night. So I just got off the train, took a taxi to my Airbnb, which is around 25 zloty, which divide that by 3, and which is like 4 something, and that's how much US dollars it is to take a taxi here. But I wanted to show you around my Airbnb just to show you how awesome this place is. And there is a keyless entry here. Kitchen area, microwave. I'm gonna get showered and jump in this thing pronto. I is tired. Okay, so I haven't done a whole lot of vlogging the last couple days because I've been absolutely knackered when I get back to the Airbnbs. I think yesterday I did around 9 miles. The day before I did 8 miles. The day before that I did 7 miles. So I just progressively have been building up and up and up. Played a little bit of doctoring to my poor feet last night. They're totally swollen just from all the walking I've been doing. And right now I'm headed into Old Town. Gonna try and grab a taxi into Old Town, which interestingly enough, it was leveled during the World War II and the Uprising, and it has subsequently been rebuilt. Throughout Warsaw, some people say that this town is an ugly city just because of the Soviet occupation that happened after World War II ended. So you'll see these gray, very plain looking buildings next to some of these rebuilt areas, and the reason that they put so much effort into rebuilding the areas here is so that they could preserve a part of their history that has been here since the 13th century. So I think Old Town, a lot of it survived, but more than half of it was leveled. So let's go find a taxi. 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm gonna try and get there before all the tourists, but we'll see if we can find a taxi this early. It was fairly easy to flag a taxi down just after a stoplight. Just don't get a taxi from Old Town, as it can cost you about 3 to 4 times the cost of a normal taxi. Always agree on the price before you get into the taxi. These are the buildings that commonly get this city a bad reputation as being ugly, which I can see their point, but when you drive a few blocks and you see a corner that looks something like it's in Paris, and then BAM! A giant red castle is in front of you. This is the Castle Square and Sandomierski Column, a major tourist spot in the city. Just like Warsaw was a crossroads to pressure from Europe and heavily influenced by merchants. The old city is the best part of Warsaw, and right near the castle are some of artisan shops I highly recommend checking out. Before visiting Poland, I learned that their national flower is actually the poppy. It represents the blood-soaked fields that dotted this land and the beauty that resulted in their independence in disturbed ground. If there is one thing that can be said about the Polish people is that they are resilient, and when you look at it, there's beauty all around this city. This is Old Market Square, a major tourist spot in the city for a very good reason, the mermaid statue. It is said that the legend will hold that Sørenka is the sister of the famous mermaid statue in Copenhagen. One of the sisters swam up the Danish Straits and stayed there. The other sister swam up the Vistula River right to where Old Town Market is today, and loved the echo in the square so much for her singing that she stayed. If you look at the city's coat of arms, you will find a dragon with a male human head holding a shield and sword. It wasn't until later that they changed the body of the dragon to a woman, and thus you have Sørenka. There are a few things that you should know before visiting Poland. Warsaw is the capital, is a UNESCO heritage site. The best time to visit is from May to September, and their tipping there is 10 to 15%. You need to eat pierogies while you're there. It's okay to drink the tap water, and if you need the police or the ambulance, here are the numbers. If you would like to find more about Warsaw, please visit culturetrekking.com, where you will find e-guides to not only Warsaw, but many other cities in Poland. Onward, citizens, to the next fun facts about Warsaw during the time of World War II. What I didn't realize coming to Poland is that before World War II, they still had scars. The people here still had scars from World War I. And they signed a treaty with Britain and France before Hitler even invaded Poland, that whenever they were in trouble, Britain and France would come and help them. Well, so when Hitler came in, through Czechoslovakia and through the Netherlands, he surrounded Poland on 3 sides and was able to do a pincer move and just squeeze the capital of Warsaw until it fell into German hands. There is so much World War II history that involves Poland, so be sure to check out my tour on Auschwitz, Krakow, and Gdansk. The tales of heroism, courage will change you, I promise. Unfortunately, Poland didn't have the army or the armory that it needed in order to defeat the Germans. Sometimes they would even go into battle with just horses and lances. How could that go up against Germans and their Tiger tanks? They just didn't have a chance. Can you imagine living in some of these apartments and then hearing the sirens go off for the bombs and then having to huddle inside hoping that the bombs didn't hit you or your family? I couldn't imagine. Warsaw and Poland as a whole is not foreign to the needs to defend itself. Dating all the way back to the 15th century, this is the Barbican. It was always under threat of invasion from the Turks, Mongols, Russians, and Germans. So if you would like to see and walk the ramparts as knights did in the medieval times, this is one of the finest examples of medieval fortifications that you will find. I would definitely get a guide to walk you through this part of the city so that they can show you exactly how the arrow slits were used, where the moat was, and where they would pour the hot oil to light people on fire below. I think this was actually my favorite part of the whole city. Sadly, as much as Warsaw longed for freedom, they gave up all they had, including their children, for the cause. You can read more about this 13-year-old boy's story on culturetrekking.com. Sadly, I didn't get to personally head into the Praga District, but that part of town has some of the best street art, neon museums, shops, and hip vibe in the whole of Warsaw. I couldn't help but stop by Madame Curie's museum here. You have to support those fellow women in science, right? Did you know that she was the only woman to receive the Nobel Peace Prize twice for 2 different things? She was honored for the Nobel Prize of Natural Sciences and one for physics and chemistry. Smarty pants. For my fellow female scientists or those who appreciate scientific minds, this is a must-see. All my days of organic chemistry came back to me. It was fun to see her lab equipment and clothing. I did wonder, however, if her clothing still had items that held some kind of radioactive charge from the plutonium that she studied. What do you think? It was pretty exhilarating for me to see the first woman's face on a Nobel Prize. Kind of inspired me to make my own greatness in my own life, whatever that looks like for me. What are some of the things that you're planning for your own life? How will you change the world for the better? Politics and religion have always been intertwined since the beginning of Poland. They even had Pope John Paul II, who came from Poland. I talk more about these churches and their significance on my website. If you're really short on time, like I was, I would say hit the Warsaw Uprising Museum, the story of how these brave Polish citizens resisted the German army, underground spy networks, and story of the Soviet oppression during the fight for freedom and hope for the future of Poland is really something not to be missed, and where I ended my own tour. But I do have some other things that I highly suggest that if you have the time, you really make an effort to see. Like the Krasinski Palace, Zaketa National Gallery of Art, the Copernicus Monument, Monument to the Ghetto Heroes. Okpova Cemetery, where the Jewish ghetto heroes lay. Nozik Synagogue. Wazinki Palace. The Corky Neon Museum in the Praga District and the University of Warsaw Botanical Gardens. Don't forget to visit culturetrekking.com for all the things that you can see and do in Warsaw, along with some of my other videos on Poland. Happy travels, friends, and don't forget to see the beauty between the contrasts of life. Bye.